Hello, this is Dr. Rob Furman in the post-apocalyptic classroom. So what a crazy time we're in here in education, huh? Right now I'm sitting here in my office, and just earlier this week we brought back every student, and it feels good. It feels good that they're back. But at the same token, there's always that sense of worry, that sense of, are we doing the right thing? But at some point we had to bring them back. We're just losing so much time. We're looking down the barrel of almost a year since every student was back in my building. As the principal, I'm sitting here thinking, how do we make up that lost time? Or can we even make up that lost time? We put a lot of emphasis on the parents. We know that. We asked them to do things that were extraordinarily difficult and in some cases impossible. To be a secondary teacher within their house while we were trying to get as much content and information to them as we could. Since last March, we've done everything from having parents try to pick up packets to getting them all Chromebooks to going virtual to then going hybrid. We were definitely throwing everything we could at the problem. But the question is, was it enough? As educators, we certainly ponder these thoughts all the time, even in a quote unquote normal school year. Are we doing enough? Can we do more? But now it feels almost too daunting a task to try to make up almost a year's worth of time. So how do we do that? Well, my first reaction to that is we throw once again everything we can at them. But at some point we have to realize there's only so many hours in a day. There's only so much time that we can dedicate to catching kids up. And then, of course, as educators, we know every child's coming to you differently. So post-pandemic, back into the post-pandemic classroom, we probably have even a wider gap than we probably ever did before. There are probably students that we could think of that, if we were told this as a simulation, which kids would we think would be able to come back and still be where they were at the beginning when they left? We probably had a group of those kids in our minds. We probably had a group of kids in our minds that were like, oh boy, this is going to be bad, because if they're not with us, they're probably not going to be doing much of anything. And several of those I'm sure we were accurate on. But what about the kids that surprised us? What about the kids that we thought would be able to maintain and didn't? What about the kids that we were not sure would be able to maintain and did? As teachers, we always have those groups of kids in our minds and how we're going to handle each one. So my first tip is, teachers, we need to throw all the kids up in the air and bring them back down into the proper groups, because I have a feeling that may have changed post-pandemic. That may be something that we need to reevaluate, because it was a whole new ballgame for the past year. We don't know now what students are coming with what skills. What did the parents achieve? What did we achieve through remote learning? We almost have to wipe the slate clean and start from scratch and getting to re-know these students. Not to mention the fact that the mental health is going to play an aspect into it. The year that we've lost in education is going to be a very different picture for each and every student. And in order to catch back up, in order to find a way to make up for that lost time, I think our first start to that is we need to reevaluate where they're coming from. We're almost getting them. It wouldn't be a blank slate. It could be a crumbling slate for all we know, but we need to be able to take a new snapshot of each and every one of our students so that we know what we're getting post-pandemic. And I think some of that's going to be surprising for us. So that's tip number one, I think. reevaluate your students upon return. What did they gain? Where's the damage? Where are the pluses? Did they learn more than we expected? Once we have that information, I think that's when we can start creating a plan to try to help bring all these kids up to where they should be. I was having a conversation with someone a couple of days ago, and I found it interesting. They had a very interesting perspective because they said, well, if everybody lost the same year, is it really a loss, a total loss? At first, I sort of choked, like, oh, well, wait a minute. That's not the way educators think. But on the other hand, there is a little bit of reality to that in the short term. In the long term, it's going to be interesting to see when this group continues moving on. I'm in an elementary center, so I think, through public school and on. But in general, it's going to be interesting to see this group moving on into adulthood and what are going to be the long-term ramifications of pretty much missing almost an entire year of schooling. And as a futurist, as many of you know, I'm a member of the World Future Society, so I like to do a lot of these type of foresight type of thinking. If we can almost predict what we think could happen if someone would lose a whole year of schooling and still be pushed on, maybe we can come up with a plan to combat that. Maybe we can't fix everything that we missed, but maybe if we use our foresight and think about the repercussions of these young ones as adults and not having X or X having been learned because of this, maybe that's what we target. I think that might be tip number 2. Tip number 2 would be to consider what was missed, looking into the future and seeing which things are more critical than others and starting there as a rebuilding block. Because I'm thinking that might be the answer to this, at least to some extent. I mean, none of us have all the answers, obviously, or else we'd already have a couple books out there and be able to read them and say, okay, here's what we do to fix this. But I'm thinking that might be at least a second logical step to prioritize what we're going to try to recoup. The interesting thing about all of this is the fact that a lot of philosophical things are coming into play now, and these will all be future podcasts as well. But one thing that I've always preached and I've always had a really hard time with is the idea of moving kids along purely based on chronological age. And that goes back to, our creation education back in 1892, the Committee of 10. It was, you're 5 years old. Okay, you're ready for kindergarten. Well, age doesn't determine that. Age shouldn't determine that, yet we do. You've sat in a classroom for a year's worth of classroom time. You're prepared to move on. I have a hard problem with that too. And now I'm sure people are out there saying, yeah, but they have to earn the grades. Yeah, but in a lot of schools, if you can get a D minus and still pass on. It doesn't say that you've learned anything that constitutes the ability to move on. So for some reason, we're stuck on this age thing in time. But really, it really should boil down to, did you master the content enough to move on? But a lot of schools just still don't do that. So maybe that's tip number 3 would be to find a way within your district to determine, has this child learned enough to move on, and almost throw the chronological age concept out the window. Now, I know that's probably super hard to do. I know it would be super hard to do right here even, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be at least thinking about it, at least contemplating it, because in the end, there may be more kids that need to be held back a year because they didn't get enough to move on than we've ever had in the past. And I think that's going to have to be an enormous acceptance from the general community, parents, other teachers, so forth and so on, because I don't think we would be doing any of them a service to move them on just because they got a year older. And I know that's a really hard pill to swallow. It is for me too, folks. But in the end, wouldn't we be doing the kids more justice in the long run by saying, look, you just didn't learn enough and you're going to suffer moving on if we can't find some time to recoup it? Maybe you should stay back a year and benefit from relearning all of this stuff. That's going to be a hard one, but I think that's my tip number 3. Tip number 3 is going to be to look at your policies and look at how you may be able to retain kids that just need more work, and don't push them on just because of age. Move them on when they're ready to move on. And not every kid's going to be ready to move on, especially now, especially because of the year we've had. So anyways, another thing that we need to consider in terms of this idea of lost time would be summertime. You know, there are bits and pieces in most schools' schedules that we don't have class. Our school, we're done in June. We don't come back till August. You know, there are months in there that are not necessarily used or used well. Again, maybe now's the time that we start looking at some of these changes in education for the better of our kids. Maybe we really need to look at emphasizing a summer program or an off hours program. What we can't do is stay the same. So we need to come up with other ideas of how we're going to recoup this time. And summer will probably be a very logical place to look for some ability to gain back this time. A lot of schools have summer programs, summer school, right? And a lot of people use that for credit recovery or, you know, gaining skills. So I'm not saying anything outrageous here or out of the ordinary. What I am saying is we need to look at that a little differently this time around. I wouldn't look at it as a program that just helps the kids get by. And I would think we would probably need to put more students into that program this year than probably ever before. We need to turn it into almost the third semester. We do 2 semesters here. We're not in trimesters, so bear with me. But I mean, we should look at maybe having a third semester. That might be something that's to our benefit this year. That would be my 4th tip. Find a way to improve the quality of your summer program and find a way to get more students involved in that summer program so that we can have more time with them in order to help them recoup these lost days, months, weeks, so forth and so on. My final tip number 5, is we need to take care of ourselves. And I'm probably going to say that at the end of every one of these podcasts because that is going to be so important. Yes, we've got a daunting task ahead of us to help recoup these months that the students have lost, but it's not impossible. But it's only going to be possible if we find a way to take care of ourselves, our own mental health, our own ability to laugh, our own ability to smile. It was interesting when the kids came back, my whole staff, and I have an extraordinarily positive, happy, wonderful, amazing staff. And when they all came back, it was sort of like a breath of fresh air. We all sort of went, they're back. Our kids, they're back. And there was definitely that sense of just joy to finally have our children back. We haven't seen them since last March all together. But then there was that little bit of a hesitation, like, oh, I hope we're making the right decision. I hope we're not going to cause more problems with this pandemic. So it was sort of a bittersweet moment. But as I told my staff, and I tell anybody that's willing to listen, you know, we have to find the joy in every little thing. Now, there was a point in time, I would say nationally, maybe even internationally, that it was really hard to find joy in almost anything. We were stuck in our houses to the nth degree, and many still are. So it was a scary time. And we had a very difficult time trying to find silver linings in just about anything. My final tip, like I said, take care of ourselves. Try to find those silver linings. Nobody has the answers to this. We're all just trying to figure it out on our own as we go. We talk to each other on a national scale. I talk to all of you. My Twitter handle at Dr. Furman, at Dr. Furman. We do a lot of communicating there. So it feels like we need to be able to, once again, as true educators, we are the positive people in this world. I firmly believe that. You can give us the worst situation possible, and we always try to find that silver lining, because that's what we have to do for our kids each and every day. We are always working at staying positive for them. We have to do it one more time, folks. We have to be able to stop and say, this is the moment that we need to be tested to find the joy, to find the happiness, to find that silver lining, so that when our kids hit our door, they see the heroes that I know we are. We are the heroes to these kids. And if they see us smiling and they see us talking positive and they see us being joyful that they're back, they won't have the anxiety. They won't get nervous. They won't be concerned as much. Because in the end, it's all about them, right? That's why we're in this business. Parents, if there's any parents listening, same. We had kids and we work with kids because we love kids. We, if anybody, understand that they're the group that's going to make this little blue marble that we all live on called Earth a little bit better when they get in control of it. In order for that to happen, we've got to take care of them. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. We're going to keep them short. We always want to keep them under 20 minutes because as educators, I don't think we have a whole lot of time to do much more than that. If you wouldn't mind, I'd really appreciate you to subscribe here. I'm on Podbean. I'm also on Patreon, Patron.com. You could look up our podcast there, spread the word a little bit. If you have any topics that you would like me to discuss, please feel free to email me, rob@robfurman.com, or you can always send it via Twitter at drfurman.com. I'm on pretty much all the social media sites under Dr. Furman. And I certainly hope and pray that you're out there somewhere being okay and taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, and most importantly, taking care of our children. So this is Rob Furman and the Post-Apocalyptic Classroom saying God bless, and looking forward to hearing from you soon. Goodbye.